Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm Sam Chase, your host, and with us this evening is Mr. Phil Hicks. And I'm going to try to get this right now because I've been known to make mistakes on people's titles. So Phil is the chairman of the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee here in Chelmsford. Did I say that correctly?
You said it right.
Thank heavens. Okay. So Phil, I'm glad you were able to be with us. And what we try to do at the beginning of each segment is we ask the guests to just give us a little bit of a biographical snapshot.
Sure.
Whatever you want, family, profession, it's up to you.
Okay, all right. Now I'll give you a little background so folks know who they're talking to. I am actually from Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. I went to school in Massachusetts at Amherst College, and that's where I met my wife. And my wife happens to be from Chelmsford, and that's how I ended up here in Chelmsford.
And she was going to Amherst as well?
No, she was working in the town of Chelmsford. I think she was actually working for the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Yeah.
Okay,
So right down the street.
Right down the street.
But we met, and she's from Chelmsford, mm-hmm. which is why I'm here. We moved here to where we currently are on School Street. I think it was June of 1987. So I've been here for a little while. I had 3 children, raised them all here. They all went to Chelmsford High School.
Okay.
Thank goodness they're all doing well. So that works out well. From a professional standpoint, I am recently retired about 2 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it's great. By the way,
it certainly is.
If you get an opportunity to do it, it's fantastic. But my area was human resources, mm-hmm. specifically employee relations. And in that employee relations space, I did spend a fair amount of time, doing training in the area of valuing differences and mm-hmm. diversity. So mm-hmm. I spent some time there. But after about 38 years of work with a number of different companies in the area, I should probably rattle off a couple of them. The MITRE Corporation, I was there for a number of years. Mm-hmm. I mentioned this. I think I was talking to one of my children's friends from New York, and I was explaining. They said, "Well, gee, what companies did you work at?" And I said, "Digital Equipment Corporation." They said, "Huh?"
Yeah.
They didn't know. I said, "Yeah." So I worked at a little place called DEC
Suddenly you realized how old you were.
How old? Yeah. See exactly. But I was with DEC for about 12 years, and then most recently with Fidelity Investments. So spent a lot of time, in the corporate world.
That's a great background, and it's funny you mentioned DEC because I worked for a number of years at Wang Laboratories. Mm-hmm. And during the course of my time at Wang, the company went Chapter 11 bankruptcy, emerged, and then reorganized and so forth. But from the time that happened to the time I retired 5 years ago, the company went through 11 different name changes and ownership and so forth. But the joke was that I worked for 11 different companies and sat in the same seat.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're very interested to know that you have a background in human resources, and perhaps maybe that's a little bit of a lead into. I guess I'd like to ask you what actually motivated you to accept this assignment on this particular committee.
I think that's a good question. Sam, I think like lots of folks, I was, impacted by, the events of last summer. Mm-hmm. Specifically, the tragic deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others did, affect me as it did other folks. And, I started thinking, gee, should I somehow get involved? Is there some way that I can, help to kind of foster a conversation around these issues and help people better understand what's going on? That was generally what I was going through. Mm-hmm. And my wife said, hey, why don't I get you an application for the committee that they're about to put together. And I said, okay, great. So I filled out the application, and the rest, I think, is history.
Right.
So got on the committee. As for the role of chair, that was kind of an interesting process. It was very short.
It usually is.
Yeah, it was very short. During our first meeting, we obviously had an opportunity. Each person had a minute or so, like we're doing now, to introduce themselves and give a little about their background. I gave some, when it was my turn, I told them a few things about my background, and I think I may have mentioned, that I had recently retired, and they went right from that conversation into, okay, so now let's vote on. We're going to have to choose a chair. Let's have some people volunteered or nominated. And a couple people said, "Oh yeah, Phil, he's a great guy. I think Phil ought to do it." So there were a couple, maybe one or two other people nominated, and then they voted. And then before I knew what happened, I was selected as the head. So I wish I could say that this was a well thought out approach, and I had planned and really wanted to do this. It just kind of fell in my lap.
That is the way it happens a lot. But
Yeah.
knowing now, I know a little bit of your background. It doesn't surprise me any, because to me, for this particular committee that you're on, the kind of assignment, and and I have watched a few of your meetings, so I do understand, I think the essence of what's going on. I think an HR background, in the old days we called it personnel management, but really a people experiential background is what you have, and it makes perfect sense to me that somebody with your background would be attractive to a committee to as their chair. I think that's almost a direct fit from where I sit. I know I've served on a number of committees here in town, and when it involved personnel-type relationships as part of the committee assignment, or we would get into that area, I always looked for somebody that with that type of background, at least to be on the committee. So that makes perfect sense. So that's very interesting. And so you found yourself as chair. And now I would, from watching you and watching some of your committee meetings, I would say that you'd had some experience in that role, because you seem to understand the parliamentary aspects of it, the procedure, when to make the motions and when to call for certain motions and things like that. So is that something that you'd had experience in, or did that just sort of come naturally to you?
Actually, I hadn't had any experience in that space, so I'm kind of learning by doing, so to speak.
Well,
so,
you wouldn't know it. You come across as somebody who is knowledgeable in that process. So
well, thank you.
Congratulations on your self-learning.
It's good to hear that. Yeah. I hadn't, prior to this involvement, I had not been, involved in any kind of a municipal board, any kind of town boards, town politics, anything remotely like that. In my other life, so to speak, I never had an opportunity. So all of this was new, and I've been trying to, kind of learn by doing and take tips. I had the benefit of other folks too, kind of letting me know. My wife's been on a couple committees, I believe, and so she's been able to kind of pull my coat on some things.
Oh, that's good to have somebody coaching, right?
So and I'm always looking for any suggestions to improve. So
right.
So I did try to make
that's
sure.
That's good. I wonder if we could take a second, because I know people have questions surrounding some of the terms that are used in when your committee is work. And we just looking at the title of the committee, diversity, racial equity, inclusion, and so forth. Can you take a minute? And I would focus primarily on those three terms:
Sure.
Diversity, racial equity, and inclusion. Just give me a little bit of a snapshot on what you think those terms mean.
Okay, all right, yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of emphasize what I think they mean, because
Right.
again, like most terms, there's different interpretations. The diversity piece really speaks to the differences, between human beings. Differences that we all have. Some are obvious. They may be race. To a certain extent, they may be gender or something like that. And then there are the other ones that aren't so obvious, like someone's religion or their schooling, economic standing, all of those kinds of things. But from our standpoint, we talk about diversity. What we mean is there are all kinds of differences that people bring to the table, and it's our desire to make sure that those differences are valued. So we're not looking at people and saying, well, gee, that's a difference, but we don't really care about that. We want to say to folks, whatever you bring to the table, we're accepting you as you are. And that's what's important. So diversity, I think, just means difference in the difference that people bring. Now, when we talk about racial equity and we talk about just equity, really what we're talking about there is, making sure that people are being treated in a fair way, in an honest way, impartially, in that you don't run into situations where people are maybe treated more harshly because of a difference. So, in the racial context, you don't want people to be treated more harshly because they're part of one racial group or another. So again, it's the equity is really looking for fairness and justice in trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can.
So if I were to use another word, and I'm just throwing this out, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's all right.
That's what happens when you're 74 years old,
It
folks.
happens.
So
It happens before you get to 74.
I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it if I think of it. Okay, so I understand that, and that's good, because there've been a lot of discussions about the term equity itself.
Right.
So I think that's good that you define it that way. So now inclusion. How would you look at that?
Inclusion, for me means actively reaching out to folks to encourage them to participate in whatever's going on. So it's not just saying, hey, this is open to everybody. Let's say you've got, an individual who might be new to the organization, new to town. It's okay to kind of maybe stop over to that person's house and say, hey, I know you're new to the organization, you're new to the town, you're new to the street. This is what we do. We have these kinds of block parties every, a couple of times a year, and we'd really like you to participate. We know you're new, you might not know anybody, but happy to have you participate, would like to do it. So again, it's not just saying that you want folks to participate, but actively reaching out to encourage that.
So you're not just tolerant of people, you're actually going out and saying, we really want you to participate.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good.
Exactly.
Good. All right. I think I'm glad you did that, because again, I've heard discussions. I don't think I've heard too much of disagreement on the word diversity. I think you defined that the way I've heard other people define it. But I think the racial equity and the inclusion, I'm glad you have expressed that, because that all makes very good sense to me. So we now have the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which I believe was established by the Select Board.
Select Board, that's correct.
A little over a year ago.
I guess they may have made the decision, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Our first meeting was September, I went back to check my notes, September 29th.
Okay.
It was a Tuesday, because we meet on Tuesday. So
it hasn't
in
been a
fact, we haven't really been actively working as a team, for a year. It's really been more like 8 months. So I'm not nitpicking. That 4 months could be, means a lot if we had been together and could continue to work, that early. But the group again just came together in in September, and we've been actively working together as a group since then.
And how many times do you meet in a month?
We initially we were meeting once a week.
Okay.
So the demands on people's time was significant, but we're trying to get things rolling, and so it made sense. We moved to twice a month. I want to say I think it was probably in mid-March we decided, and don't quote me, but sometime around the March time frame, we started to just look at meeting a couple of times a month as opposed to for every Tuesday.
And you had the disadvantage of, I think, you started as a remote committee. And if you think about that, in the midst of the pandemic, so you weren't a committee that had been used to meeting together in a room and that
Right.
kind of collegiality, and now all of a sudden you have to go on a remote basis. You started remote. And I've thought of this now, and watching your committee meetings, I thought, I'm not sure people understand that. And having served on many boards and committees myself, it's difficult at best under normal circumstances. But I'm thinking, these folks here have done a pretty good job considering that they never had the benefit of all getting in the same room and, chit-chat and all the stuff that you do, the social stuff that you do.
Exactly, that you use to build a camaraderie
Right.
that you need to have for a
Very,
team.
very difficult.
Right.
But in watching your committee meetings, you wouldn't get the sense that hadn't happened. Do you know what I'm saying? It just struck me. I was watching one of your meetings not too long ago, and that thought just came to me. I thought, these guys have, maybe some of them have never even met. I don't know. Is that true?
Let me stop. I think with maybe one exception, I've not met anyone not personally at all.
That's amazing. It really is when you think about it.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Sam, because I think people, I'm not sure everybody understands how important, when you have a group and you're trying to put together a team that works, and clicks together, you have to have that camaraderie. You really need to be able to, get to know people a little bit and get to understand how folks communicate and all that's really important. We had to do all that with Zoom.
Exactly.
We had to do all that with Zoom.
Is, I haven't met anybody yet who likes the platform.
No,
Are you going to be the first?
No, I'm
okay.
not. I'm not. I'm certainly not in love with it. No.
So it's difficult at best. So that
Right,
I didn't mean to digress, but I
No, I'm
wanted to bring
glad
that up.
I'm glad that you
So
did.
you've been going since September, and now, how did you receive any kind of a mandate or direction from the select board?
And again, I'm just kind of going on my recollection. There was no specific, set of details. It was really, we were kind of given, our own kind of room and our own space to feel this through, to figure out what we wanted to do, to try to put some things together, and then share that, with the board and with the community at large. And that's what we did. That can be challenging because, again, we're coming into a space where there was no previous kind of blueprint. There was no previous, committee that we could kind of just piggyback on whatever they were doing. So we had to create, our own kind of set of directions, our own values, and kind of talk through what we wanted. We spent a fair amount of time putting together a mission statement that we could all get behind. Again, you're talking 13 or so people from, we're a diverse, talking diversity, we're a diverse group amongst ourselves. So we have people from different backgrounds, all different types of things, and we needed to get together and come to an agreement around what we were going to focus on and be able to clearly communicate that. So that was a big piece of the work. And then just again through meeting, talking about issues, talking about ideas, trying to figure out where do we want to focus some of our attention. We were able, again, because of the group and because of the talented group, the commitment of the folks on the committee, we were able to kind of figure out some things. And so,
Well, that's good. So let's go into that. Share with us a little bit about what you did finally decide to do as basic mission, and then where do you go from there? And perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of your things that you have achieved, and
Right.
and maybe what's in store for us in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the main things we wanted to do is to help to raise the awareness of people in town of issues having to do with diversity and equity and inclusion. So making sure that folks kind of had a place to go to get information. So one of the main things that we were able to do, and I believe it's one of our big achievements, is getting our webpage up and running. We do have a webpage, obviously, as part of the town's,
Yeah.
the town's web presence. But we have an actual page there, and you can go there to get all kinds of information about what the committee is currently doing. What are some of the other resources, not only just in town, but in the region and nationally? What else is going on, in this particular area? So we've been able to do things, for example, during Black History Month. We had a arrangement whereby for each different day in Black History Month would feature a different, what we call notable African American for that day. So you would click on that date. If you went to our website and went to the calendar, up would pop up, the name of a particular individual and a short bio and some links, out on the internet for other information on those folks. So that's a kind of resource that the town never had before. That was never, available, and that was something that was, good for just residents who wanted general information, students, who were in school who were trying to, better understand what was going on, and when they talked about Black History Month, what other individuals are there in the world other than just Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, just other individuals.
Right.
So there was an opportunity to do that, and the website allowed for that information to get out there. When it was Women's History Month, we did something that was a little different, and I was really proud of it. I wish I could say it was my idea, but no, it was someone else on our on the committee said, why don't we feature women from the town of Chelmsford who have made major contributions to the town in one way or the other. So that's what we ended up doing, and so in much the same way of the way we had things with Black History Month, we had on different days different women from the town of Chelmsford who had contributed to the town, and they were featured on that website. So again, being able to go there and get that information, so that was useful, and we use the website for all kinds of information, making sure that or the web page that is for all types of information. So that's one of the things that we've done that we're very proud of. And I do want to, while I don't want to embarrass anyone on the team, I do want to make a little shout out to Tricia Zurich, who is responsible for the web page and getting things posted up there. And so she's been absolutely vital in making all that happen. So that's been great. In addition to our web page, one of the things that we said we wanted to do is to reach out to other what we're calling influencers in the town of Chelmsford. So making sure that we made contact with people like the the HR director for the town, the business development manager for the town, the director of human services for the town, as well as, establishing relationships with the police department and the Chelmsford Public Library. So we've had contact with them, and we want to maintain regular, kind of a regular, almost a partnership with them to understand what's going on in their worlds, making sure that our committee is aware of that, and trying to figure out ways to continue to get the word out.
And you can be a resource.
Absolutely.
What about schools? Have you made any inroads with schools?
Well, I know that there are a number of our members who have contacted folks, or who are working with folks within the Chelmsford's education system. We have a couple of folks who are active teachers, in the Chelmsford system.
In Chelmsford.
In Chelmsford currently, yeah. So, they're able to, take some of the information from our team back to the schools, having some conversations, and we even have one of our membership works directly with Chelmsford Cares. They're
Yes.
kind of I should say work directly with them, but is a just kind of a link, to them. So, as information comes up that things that they're doing that we might be interested in, we share that, and vice versa. So we've got a way, kind of a communications link, if you will, between, those groups and our committee as well.
That's good. I know I've heard discussions in the community about curriculum at the school system, and thought that perhaps that your committee might be involved in some way in helping address, for lack of a better word, maybe some of the deficiencies in the curriculum as it relates to things that we're talking about here, diversity, inclusion, and racial equity. So any thoughts along those lines?
Well, I know that there have been some more general conversations about that. As you might well imagine, when you start to talk about curriculums, that can get to be, a fairly complicated,
Very complicated. Yes.
conversation, because you've got a number of different things that you obviously need to accomplish. You've got, to cover, a certain amount of ground, if you will, during the school year. And what we've been trying to do, rather than, spending a lot of time, kind of quibbling about, what textbook people are using and all that sort of thing. And we haven't gotten into those conversations at all. What we've been trying to do is to talk with folks at the schools to say, you've got a particular reading list for, fourth graders, during this particular module of history. How about, including on that reading list maybe some more materials, by other people of color, or by individuals who have a little different perspective on history. So again, you're not going at trying to change the curriculum.
Again, we're getting back to the word inclusion, aren't we? Okay, so that's very good, and I'm glad you explained that, because I think that's something that a lot of people have been thinking about and weren't really sure. So I think that's a very good explanation. So we've got about a minute left. I told you it would go fast.
Wow, that did go fast.
Can you, and I should have written this down and I didn't, but you alluded a little bit a while ago about about your website, which is on the town webpage. So
yes, it is. And it's under the diversity, racial equity, and inclusion.
Okay, so you go to the front town web page, and then
put in.
Do you do search, or is there a link?
You would ask.
And I've accessed it 2 or 3 times, and I can't remember.
I'm sorry that I don't know.
Okay.
So I have to apologize.
But anyway, folks,
but you do have that link. You can just put it in the search.
Okay.
Put it diversity.
So
and
go to the town website, and if you don't know what it is, just Google Chelmsford, Mass, and you'll get it, and you'll find the website of the Diversity, Racial Equity, and Inclusion Committee there, and it's very comprehensive. I suggest that you folks take a look at it, and We're out of time. Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate
Okay.
it.